David Bailey, winner of the United States Grand Prix.
And the USA has swept the motocross to nations.
Can Jeremy McGrath now take the momentum away from Jeff Emig and regain the title that he gave up last year?
Damon Bradshaw, Jeff Stanton, and Jeff Ward gave the USA its 10th consecutive Motocross to Nations title in the 44th running of the World Championship team event in Squirrel Valley near a small town in Vemberley, Sweden. Although each member contributed to the team's success, was a move by Stanton in the final moto that sealed the victory by 1 point over the Belgian team. Unlike the past 2 years when the U.S. had the title wrapped up after 2 of the 3 motos had been run, this year the outcome was in doubt until near the end of the 3rd and final 500 and 250cc class moto. Stanton, who was a member of last year's winning team, said it feels great to win, but it wasn't easy. The Motocross to Nations format consists of 3 30-minute plus 2-lap motos, which combine 2 classes on the track at the same time. The first moto features the 500 and 125 class, the second moto the 250 and 125 class, and the third moto the 500 and 250 class. A team's best 4 of 6 moto scores are counted toward the championship. Earlier in the year, a new rule was passed by the FIM that counts the team's best 5 finishes, but it takes 18 months for the new rule to go into effect, so this year they'll be using 4 motos instead of 5. On Saturday, the riders get 2 practice sessions in length of 1 hour. The riders have already completed the first practice session. The mechanics have made the necessary adjustments on the motorcycles, and the riders are getting ready to go back out for the second practice session. Well, these are a few of our biggest, or largest, just supporters for the U.S. team. If you don't recognize these guys, that's Bevo Forte with Scott Goggles in the left. In the center, Bill West, race promoter, and C.E. Altman, another promoter for the U.S., and of course, Marcia Bradshaw. Jeff Ward, rider number 1, makes it out to the racetrack first. Ward almost never made it to Sweden to ride the track, though. As he prepared to leave the U.S., he discovered that his British passport had expired. Ward was born in Scotland, and of course, that's why he has a British passport. Fortunately, Ward's girlfriend had friends in the British consulate, and he was able to pick up a new passport on the way to the airport. The whoops began forming early in the first practice session on Saturday, a session that saw Bradshaw and Stanton quickly get up to speed, while Ward preferred to put in only a few fast laps at a time. The whoops, drop-offs, and particularly one peak jump with a flat landing soon took their tolls. Stanton broke the rear wheel in his Honda, and it became clear that the riders would have to go easy on their machines if they expected to finish. It also became clear that the Belgians were going to be a threat, as Gookins often tailed Ward and Stanton, challenging them both in Saturday's practice sessions. In one instance, Gookins nearly landed on Ward when the American rolled over a peak jump. Gookins continued trying to apply mental pressure to the Americans in the practice session before the race. The newly crowned 250 world champion, Alessandro Puzar, was also looking very fast. Rider number 11, 250 Honda, and of course that's Ricky Ryan riding for Luxembourg, and Bradshaw is a little styling for the Swedish fans. Bradshaw, Stanton, and Ward prepare for the opening ceremonies as an estimated 9,500 spectators attend the event in Vimmerby, Sweden. As we take a look at the riders going out for the opening ceremonies, remember that the top rider with the lower number is the 500 rider, the middle rider will be the 250 rider, and the lower rider on the screen will be the 125 rider. Now, let's take a look at the teams and who's riding for each team. As we look at the riders and teams that are favored for the event, we still have Spain, Switzerland, Denmark, Ireland, Norway, Yugoslavia, Poland, Finland, the Soviet Union, Japan, and Germany. The riders are now in the staging area where they must be 10 minutes before the start of the event. The first moto will be the 125 and 500cc class, so Jeff Stanton gets to set this one out and see what happens. As the 5-second card goes up and the riders get ready, everyone watches the gate. As the riders come off the gate and into the first turn, it's the Swede Stefan Larsson streaking off with a hole shot, while Ward spent part of the opening laps behind Lease before passing the Australian. Damon Bradshaw certainly had his hands full from the second row, running in the 25th spot and 6th 125. As they come out of the back section, it's number 22, Larsson, the Swede, followed closely by Jeff Ward, who has now moved into the number 2 spot, taking that spot away from the Australian rider, Jeff Lease. Damon Bradshaw definitely has his hands full. He's moved up to the 19th spot overall, but he still has several 125s in front of him. Kind of an interesting point talking about Larsson, about his quick start off the gate, and that is that they used the same start for all the GPs throughout Sweden. Guckens, the Belgian rider that gave the Americans such a fit in the practice session, never got a chance to race with Ward as he spun the tire on the start line when the gate dropped for the first 500-125 moto. Guckens held 10th at the completion of the first lap. Belgian teammate Everts was right behind Guckens in the lead of the 125 class, with a couple of 500s separating him from the pack of 125s consisting of Tractor, Parker, Morrison, Barrow, Bradshaw, Jochum, and Carlson. Damon Bradshaw just passed number 24, Carlson, the Swedish rider, to take over the number 4 spot in the 125 class, while Jeff Ward continues to catch up to the Swedish rider and take over that number 1 spot. However, knowing Jeff Ward, he's content just to stay in second to find out the lines and check out the pace of the Swedish rider. And Damon Bradshaw gives it everything he has to try and catch the German rider, number 15, Peter Barrow. At the front of the pack, Jeff Ward moved his Tom Morgan's Scott Stauffer tuned factory Kawasaki in on Larsson. Ward said after the race that Larsson was going faster than he wanted to go at first. He decided to wait for him to make a mistake. Ward also said that one time he swapped and barely saved it. While Ward's waiting for the mistake to happen to get by Larsson, Damon Bradshaw still pushes hard to get by the German rider. Damon Bradshaw pushing as hard as he can, but just can't seem to make up any ground on the other 125s. It seems as though Damon Bradshaw's bike isn't quite as quick as some of the other 125s. As the riders complete the first 4 laps of the 17-lap moto, this is the way it looks with the 500s and for the 125 class. Damon Bradshaw still works on number 15, the German rider, to try and take over that number 3 spot. In the 125cc class, it took Tractor a few laps to get past the 500s that separated him from class leader Everts at the start. But once he did, Tractor quickly reeled in the Belgian. Tractor passed Everts once, but Everts repassed him, and the two riders struggled for supremacy in the 125 class. Everts eventually prevailed with the help of a 500cc rider. Jeff Ward, a 7-time member of the U.S. Motocross of Nations winning team, continues to hold on to the number 2 spot behind Stefan Larsson, the Swede rider. While the Swedes are loving it because wouldn't they like to win over the USA, particularly in their home country of Sweden. And now Damon Bradshaw has passed number 15, the German rider, and moved up to rider number 24, Carlson from Sweden, to try and take over one more position in the 125 class to give the USA one less point for our total toward the win. While Ward was waiting for his chance to seize the lead, Martins has been steadily moving toward the front. After passing England's Paul Mellon, Denmark's Soren Morrison, and then Lees, he was soon right on the heels of Jeff Ward. Damon Bradshaw seems to have lost a position as the German rider, Breyer, on the Suzuki once again goes past Bradshaw. And now the battle heats up for the number 1 spot as the Swede, number 22, Larsson, holds on to the number 1 spot, while Jeff Ward, Kawasaki, holds on to the number 2 spot. But what's this? Right in 3rd place is a rider from Luxembourg, Jackie Martins, on a 500 KTM. At this particular time, it seems like Martins seems to be the fastest rider on the racetrack. It appears as though the Swedish rider may be tiring just a little bit as he seems to slow. Jeff Ward tries to cut on the inside on all the turns, but again is chopped off by Larsson. Meanwhile, while Larsson slows Ward down a little bit and Ward can't run at full pace, it seems as though Jackie Martins, rider number 10, continues to close and now sits on the rear wheel of Ward. Damon Bradshaw seems to be running all by himself, doing everything he can to try and get his 125 Yamaha to run a little bit quicker. Bradshaw, riding flawlessly, just can't seem to make up any ground on the other 125 riders. Meanwhile, Kawasaki-mounted Jeff Ward, number 1, has moved into the number 1 spot, and Jackie Martins, the Luxembourg rider, has now moved to the number 2 spot. Martins, no doubt the fastest man on the track right now, has moved up and is hot on the heels of Jeff Ward, looking to take over the number 1 position and take only 1 point toward the championship title. But I don't think that's what Jeff Ward has in mind. I think Jeff Ward's going to try and pull it out and see if he can get away from the Luxembourg rider. Looks as though Jeff Ward was having a few problems riding on this rough sand track. And now the 500 class looks like this: Martins, Ward, Larsson, and Lees. And in the 125 class, it's Everett, Tractor, Carlson, and Bradshaw. Damon Bradshaw keeps that 125 Yamaha flat out, but can't seem to make up any ground on the front 4 125 riders. Meanwhile, in the 500 class, it seems as though Jackie Martins from Luxembourg has taken over the number 1 spot, with Jeff Ward right behind. No doubt this is the kind of racetrack that Martins likes, and he definitely has the KTM working well. Rider number 27 from Belgium, Stefan Everts, on a 125 Suzuki, holds down that number 1 spot without much of a challenge from the other 125 riders. At this point, Damon Bradshaw, holding down the number 4 spot in the 125 class, doesn't have too much hopes to try and move up another position when he can't even see any other 125s out in front of him. All he can do is go as quick as he can go and hope that possibly something happens to one of the other 125 riders to give us one less point toward the championship. Meanwhile, Jackie Martin, rider number 10 on the KTM, continues to charge hard to hold down that number 1 position in the 500 class, but Jeff Ward is not going to just give it to him. Jeff Ward stays close and keeps pushing. As the moto gets toward the end, Jeff Ward is hoping to take over that number 1 position to give the USA only 1 point in the 500cc class. The riding style of Jackie Martin's isn't quite what the American riders are used to, but no doubt on this sand track, he's definitely running faster than anyone. Damon Bradshaw, once again with a flawless riding style, continues to push, but again can't seem to make up any ground, while Stefan Everts is just riding flawless out in front on the 125 Suzuki. With only 1 lap remaining, all the riders can hope for now is to hold on to that position that they're running in and hope to get the lowest possible score toward the championship for their country. And it's Jackie Martin's taking the win with 1 point for Luxembourg, while Jeff Ward holds on to the number 2 position, taking 2 points for the USA. Denmark finishes 3rd, Belgium finishes 4th, and Sweden finishes 5th. And in the 125 class, it's number 27, Stefan Everts, on a 125 Suzuki, taking 1 point for Belgium, while Damon Bradshaw holds on to the number 4 spot, giving the USA 4 points. So here's the way it looks after Moto number 1. Belgium has 5 points, USA 6 points, Sweden 8 points, the Netherlands 10 points, and England 13 points. As the riders prepare for the start of Moto number 2, and once again the riders have to be in the staging area 10 minutes before the start of the Moto, the riders discuss the last Moto and also the game plan for Moto number 2. Once again, the U.S. support team gets ready for Moto number 2. What's this? One of the Belgium guys holding up an American flag. Oh, wait till we show this to the Belgians. Well, I don't think there's any doubt the Americans know who's going to finish second already. Some more of the U.S. effort, 2 of the team managers and 1 mechanic discussing Moto number 2, and they seem to be pretty happy about how they feel things are going to go in Moto number 2. In the front row, Jeff Stanton, and directly behind him on the 125, Damon Bradshaw is the rider for the start of Moto number 2. When the second Moto left the line, 250 class rider Peter Janssen of Sweden grabbed the hole shot with Stanton tucking in behind him. West German rider Jasinski briefly held on to 3rd before being passed by Puzar. Several 125 riders started on the front row, with Morrison and Jokums getting the jump on the field at 7th and 8th overall. Everts was a front row starter, but went down early on the first lap. Someone fell in front of Everts, and his clutch lever was broken in the fall. So that should make things look a little better for the USA in Moto number 2, seeing as how Everts has the first place in the 125 class in Moto number 1. And Damon Bradshaw holds down the number 6 position in the 125 class as the first half a lap is completed. As the riders come around to complete lap number 1, it's the Swedish rider Johnson, the number 1 position, with a hot battle going on for the number 2 position between Jeff Stanton and Alessandro Puzar. Puzar has moved up to the number 2 spot with Stanton hot on his heels. And Damon Bradshaw, who started in the second row behind Stanton, is still running 16th and 6th 125 on the racetrack. And the battle gets even more intense for the number 1 spot between the Swede number 23, Peter Janssen, number 5, the rider from Italy, Alessandro Puzar, and Jeff Stanton from the USA, as Stanton tries to make all the moves to take over that #1 spot in the 250 class, knowing that we need points desperately after our first moto finishes. And now Jeff Stanton on his Denny Bentley tuned Honda takes over the #2 position and goes hot after the Swede to try to take over first. And just out of the sights of the camera, Jeff Stanton does it, takes over the #1 position in the 250 class. Stanton was obviously up there where he wanted to be in the beginning of the moto, and now that he's taken over the #1 position, the idea is go as strong as you can and try and stretch out as much of a lead as you possibly can on the other 250 riders. Jeff Stanton pulls out just a little bit from the other two 250 riders while the battle continues for that #2 spot between the Swedish rider, number 23, Jansson, and number 5, the Italian rider, Alessandro Puzzar. While the 250s continue to battle, Damon Bradshaw has his hands full with his own battle in the 125 class for the #4 spot, with Pedro Tractor, rider number 30 from the Netherlands, on the Suzuki. Damon Bradshaw still trying to get that Yamaha to run as hard and as fast as he can, but he doesn't seem to have the power of some of the other 125s. Still in that 250 battle, it's Jeff Stanton holding down the #1 position, with the Swede rider number 23, Jansson, in second, and Puzzar running in the #3 spot. Puzzar, the new 250 world champion from Italy, still trying to put the move on the Swedish rider. Meanwhile, Tractor has worked his way past Damon Bradshaw to take over the #4 position in the 125 class. While Stanton continues to dominate this moto, riding flawlessly, no doubt, the real race is for second place between Jansson and Puzzar still. However, Puzzar has now taken over the #2 position from Jansson. Jeff Stanton gives the Swedish fans a little demonstration of his riding style and how he was able to conquer the 250 National Championship class in the USA and the Supercross Championship for the second straight year. So here's the way it looks after 5 laps. In first place, #1, Jeff Stanton from the USA. In second place, #5, Puzzar from Italy. In third place, number 23, Jansson from Sweden. In fourth place, number 14, Jasinski from Germany. In fifth place, number 20, Dak from Australia. In sixth place, number 65, Bekkanen from Finland. And number 47, Nielsen from Denmark. Jeff Stanton continues to dominate in the 250 class in the second moto of the Motocross des Nations in Vemberley, Sweden. While Alessandro Puzzar holds on to the #2 spot, he can't seem to get away from the Swedish rider, rider number 23, Jansson. While the main focus seems to be up front on the 250 class, the 125 class looks like this. In first place, it's number 24, Carlson of Sweden. In second place, number 9, Rob Herring of England. In third place, number 30, Pedro Tractor from the Netherlands. In fourth place, number 51, Alan Morrison from Norway. In fifth place, number 3, Damon Bradshaw from the USA. And in sixth, number 66, Ismo Bekkanen from Finland. As you can see, Damon Bradshaw is riding extremely well and being very aggressive, but the problem is when you have to start in the second row and some of the other 125s choose to start in the first row, gives him a bit of an advantage. The competition is so close in this class and the power is so close that it's very difficult to make up a lot of time anyway, and if your bike isn't 100% as fast as the other motorcycles, it really becomes a problem to try and make up any ground. So Damon Bradshaw just does the best job that he can and keeps pushing and hoping to improve his finishing position. Bradshaw works the bike and keeps that forward motion to try and get the bike there as quick as he can, but it just doesn't seem like he can make that poor little 125 Yamaha run any faster. While Jeff Stanton continues to dominate the 250 class, looking for some smoother lines on this rough and choppy sandy track here in Vimmerby, Sweden, Jeff Stanton continues to pull away from the competition. While Stanton continues to pull away from the other 250 riders, the battle is still hot for the number 2 position between Puzar and Janssen. Meanwhile, Damon Bradshaw has his hands full trying to take over that number 4 spot from Morrison in the 125 class. It seems as though Morrison is starting to fade and Bradshaw picks up the pace at the halfway point to try and get past Morrison. Well, how about a couple of other American riders, like Rick Ryan, number 11, riding a 250 Honda for Luxembourg? Well, he's running back to the number 10 position in the 250s. And rider number 6 in the 125 class, Trampas Parker, on a 125 KTM riding for Italy. Well, he's riding back in the number 6 position. That's in the 125 class. And now Damon Bradshaw, rider number 3 from the USA, is down in a nasty wreck with Alan Morrison, rider number 51 from Ireland. It seems as though the 2 riders come over the plateau. One of the riders changed his lines. Bradshaw landed on top of Morrison, and now both riders are laying alongside the racetrack. We're going to have to wait to see what happens. Meanwhile, Jeff Stanton continues to lead the 250 class, still continuing to pull away from the other 250 riders. Jeff Stanton continues to make this sandy racetrack look a little bit smoother than it really is. The problem is that it's not only sandy, whooped out racetrack, it's also chopped. And as Stanton comes over the plateau, we can see that they're taking Damon Bradshaw off in the stretcher. It seems as though it's a possibility that Damon Bradshaw has possibly cracked some ribs. They're going to take him to the hospital and see just exactly what the problem is. Now, after the race, when Damon got back from the hospital, after talking to him, he had a little different opinion of what Morrison did as far as exactly what happened. As Damon explained, he had followed Morrison for a while, worked his way up behind him, decided to pass him on a plateau jump. Morrison come up a little bit short, cased on the top of the jump, moved over in front of Bradshaw. Bradshaw landed on top of him, and from there, Bradshaw doesn't remember a thing that happened. Morrison, well, he said he was just riding his normal line, and Bradshaw came from nowhere, and then while pointing to the white paint on the top of his helmet from Bradshaw's frame, he said, "Well, you know the rest of the story from here." As we come to the closing laps, it's still Stanton, with Janssen taking over the number 2 spot from Puzar, putting Puzar back to 3rd. In 4th, it's number 26, Bervoets from Belgium, working his way up from 8th on the start. In 5th, it's number 14, Jasinski from Germany. And in the 6th place, it's number 65, the Finnish rider, Pekka Vähänen. In the 125 class, it looks like this. In 1st, number 9, Rob Herring. In 2nd, number 30, Pedro Tractor. And in 3rd, the early 125 leader, number 24, Carlson from Sweden. With number 27, Stefan Everts, the winner of Moto number 1 in the 125 class, running way back with a broken clutch lever. This also shows how important using the clutch is, particularly on a 125. When points are so important in this team event, a rider can't afford to just cruise around, and it makes it very difficult, particularly on this sandy racetrack without a clutch lever, to be aggressive at all. Meanwhile, Jeff Stanton continues to lead in the 250 class, while Puzar has now moved back into the number 2 spot, with Carlson dropping back to 3rd. With only a couple laps remaining, the battle still goes on for the number 2 position between the Italian rider and the Swedish rider. Both of these riders realizing how important one position may be, one less point for their total at the end of the day. While the real battle still continues in the 250 class for the number 1 position, the Belgian rider Bervoets still holds on to that number 4 position in the 250 Kawasaki. While Stanton only has a lap and a half remaining in this moto, the U.S. team is going to be in a little bit of trouble going into moto number 3. With Bradshaw's finished at first in the 125 class and a DNF after landing on another rider, things aren't looking too good for the Americans. However, fortunately for the Americans, the Belgian team has had their share of problems. Everett's crash, now running 16th, looks like that's going to be his finish in the 125 class. And Barvoet's going to take a 4th in the 250 division. That's making things look a little bit better for the U.S. team because the Belgians were running extremely strong. And of course, the problem going into moto number 3 is that the USA only has 3 good, strong moto finishes and 1 DNF, and we need 4 strong scores in order to tie up the championship. So it looks like at the end of 2 motos, it's going to be the Swedes with a lead of 14 points, with a 3rd and a 3rd in the 125 and 250 class in moto number 2, and with a 3rd and a 5th in the 125 and 500 class in moto number 1. That's going to give them 14 points. Running in second place is going to be Italy with 23 points, the Belgians with 25 points, Germany with 28 points, Denmark with 35 points, Luxembourg with 36 points, Australia with 36 points, France with 50 points, Norway with 55 points, and 10th would be Switzerland with 60 points. With only 3 good moto finishes but some very low scores is the USA 7 points, Netherlands 12 points, and Great Britain with 14 points. Each one of these countries needs a good moto finish in order to have a chance at tying up the championship, but things are still close going into moto number 3. As the riders prepare for the start of moto number 3, it's good to note that Damon Bradshaw has been released from the hospital with only some minor bruises. As the riders prepare for the start of moto number 3, which will be the 250 and 500 class, Jeff Ward lines up in the front row with Jeff Stanton directly behind him. As the gate dropped for the start of moto number 3, Lease charged into the lead, followed closely by Vanderven, Mallon, Australians Brouwer, Johnson, and Ward. And Stanton was caught up in a close call just out of the gate. Stanton said after the race, and I quote, "A Russian rider got squirrely and hit me. There was nothing I could do. I was way back in the first turn. I was off my bike, running beside it, and after I was rammed, I got back on, and I knew I had to ride as hard as I could and do the best job that I could." As the riders come past, Lease holds on to the number 1 spot, followed closely by Mallon from England. Vanderven, number 28 of the Netherlands, holds on to 3rd, and the first 250 rider, Johnson of Sweden, and then Ward. And then Stanton back in the pack in 22nd position definitely has some making up to do. As the riders come around to complete lap number 1, it's Mallon that's moved into the number 1 spot. For some reason, Jeff Lease doesn't seem to be 100% and felt like it was better to just try and maintain his pace and not try to go any faster than he was capable of doing at this time. While Jeff Ward holds down the number 5 position and doesn't seem to be gaining on the front runners. In fact, they seem to be pulling away slightly. And Jeff Stanton, well, he's moved up to about the number 17 position, but still has a long way to go. No doubt Stanton is wasting no time on this rough sandy track here in Sweden. Again, he's only gone a few turns. He's already passed a few more riders. He's moved up to the number 14 position, and there's still about 25 minutes to go in this moto, so there's no telling what Stanton's going to be able to do. Meanwhile, Mallon still holds on to that number 1 position with Lease close behind, not letting him get away. And in the number 3 spot, that's the first 250 rider on a Yamaha, Peter Jansson of Sweden. Jeff Stanton continues his drive and has now moved up to the number 12 spot and closing quickly on the leaders, while Jeff Ward's bike doesn't seem to be handling as well as it was handling earlier and seems to be having to work a little harder than normal to get the job out there. Alessandro Puzar, the new 250 world champion, moves up on the rear wheel of Wardy. While Puzar works on Wardy to try and take over that position, Jeff Stanton from the back of the pack still trying to break into the top 10 and needing desperately to catch up and possibly pass Puzar to get as few points as we possibly can, because remember, the USA needs another good moto finish, and Wardy seems to be having his share of problems. In fact, Wardy said after the race that the shock had gone away in about the third or fourth lap. What was happening was the rebound dampening was gone. The bike was starting to act like a pogo stick. He said he was just trying to hold his lines and maintain the best he could, but he knew that once he dropped past fourth place, there was no sense in trying any harder. It didn't make any difference because Bradshaw's fourth place finish was going to come into play, and it didn't make any difference if he finished 20th place, and he didn't want to take a chance and get off on his head, so he figured some kind of result was better than no result. But still running in the number 1 position is rider number 7 from England, Mallon, and in the number 2 position, Jeff Leask on bike number 19. And still in the number 3 position is the Swedish rider, but now Alexander Puzar has moved up to the number 4 position, and Jeff Stanton has already moved up to the number 8 position. So there's still plenty of time left in this moto, and the question is, can Jeff Stanton catch up, and particularly pass the front 250 riders to get the USA another single point toward the championship? Puzar now moves to the rear wheel of the Swede, trying to take over that number 1 position in the 250 class. And of course, with the points being as close as they are, and the Swedes leading the point standings going into the final moto, Puzar knows that he has to end up number 1 in the 250 class. And of course, his teammate has to get a good finish for them to be able to do well. So things right now are looking pretty good for the Italian team, with Puzar getting ready to take that number 1 spot away from the Swede. While Puzar runs in the number 5 spot, Jeff Stanton has moved up to 9th, and no doubt the other 250 riders know that Stanton is coming and they better stay on the gas or they're going to be in big trouble. Well, the big 500 of Mallon, the English rider, continues to tear the track up and hold on to that number 1 position. The 250 riders are closing ground rapidly, although it doesn't make any difference if the 250s were to pass the 500s as far as the overall standings or points. However, they want to try and stretch the lead out as far as they can, because when they know Stanton's coming, they know that come near the end of the moto, they better have as big a lead as possible. And as you can see, Stanton's riding very well. In fact, probably pushing as hard as I've seen Stanton push in a long time. The track, well, it's getting rough and it's getting choppy. In fact, Stanton and Ward both said after the race that this track is one of the toughest they've ever ridden. But to watch this track and to look at the way Stanton's getting around there, who would have guessed that this track is as rough and as choppy as it is? The problem is that the track not only is because it's sand gets whooped out, it also has got a lot of real sharp ledges in it, which makes it have a lot of kickers, as you can see here by Jeff Ward having that problem going into the turn. And what you don't want to have on a racetrack like this, you don't want to have a 500, and you don't want to have a shock that's not working, because it'll put you on your head in a heartbeat. So it's probably the smartest thing that Jeff Ward says, hey, I'm just going to take it a little easy here. I'm going to try and get whatever points I can get, but I'm not going to bail off, and I'm going to hope that Stanton does the job and brings us through. And as you can see, Stanton is certainly pushing that thing as hard as it can possibly go and moving up. And right now, Stanton's moved his way up, and he's sitting in the number 8 position. While Johnson and Puzar had started in the front row, picked up their battle in the 250 class, they had moved to 3rd and 4th overall. While Gookins was on the move and assumed 5th early in the race, Martins ended his early race when the foam in his rear tire had come off the rim. Puzar passed Johnson and closed the gap on Leask by the halfway point, and a couple of laps later, Puzar was in the lead. Well, what happened to Mallon? Well, he saw that he was pulling away from Leask a little bit, decided to settle down and just kind of take things as they were going. Then he lost the back end of the bike, and by the time he picked the bike back up, Leask and Gookins both had gone by. Stanton didn't reach 5th until about the halfway point when he passed the battling Johnson and Vekkanens in one corner. Stanton had to pass Mallon before he could begin to close on Gookins. While up front, Puzar held on to a comfortable lead over Leask. It didn't take Stanton long to get Gookins in sight, and after following the Belgian for about a lap, Stanton came out of the back section of the track alone. Gookins only dropped 1 position on the track to Vekkanen and was further delayed when he collided with Mallon as he remounted. With time running out, there was little chance that he would catch Least. Gookins knew that if Pouzar could win the 250 class, and he could catch up and catch Least, that the Belgians would have a very good chance to win it. However, he stated later that after Stanton had knocked him down, he said, "He hit me in the front, and when inside he was going very fast." He said, "That's not a very nice way to pass." But he knew that he must hold him off so that he couldn't catch Pouzar. What Stanton didn't realize, though, that his move had effectively locked up the title, and in the closing moments he continued to charge hard to the front. Although Pouzar holds on to the #1 spot, Jeff Stanton is definitely closing, and now Stanton, with only a few laps remaining, has moved within 11 seconds of Pouzar. Alexandre Pouzar, the new 250 world champion, would like nothing more than to prove to the Swedish fans that he is the fastest 250 rider in the world by holding off Stanton right to the finish. With only 5 laps left in the 44th running of the Motocross to Nations here in Sweden, things are looking a lot closer for the U.S. team than they have in the past few years, when we had the championship tied up after only 2 motos have been run. At this point, anything can happen. If Gookins can catch Least or Least breaks down, then the Belgian team would have a total of 9 points. With a first 125 in Moto 1, a first 500 in Moto 3, a third 250 in Moto 3, and a fourth in the first 500 heat. The USA would have a fourth 125 in Moto number 1, a second 500 in Moto number 1, a first 250 in Moto number 2, and a second 250 in Moto number 3 for 9 points. Then it would go to the 5th finish to break the tie, and the Belgians would win with a 4th place over the USA's 9th. So the last couple of laps are going to be tough, and who has all the pressure? Jeff Stanton. Knowing what can happen with the 500s, Stanton can't just sit back and hope things go this way till the finish. He has to try and catch Pouzar in hopes to get only 1 point in this moto to assure the American team of a victory. With only 4 laps left, Jeff has moved from the 22nd place on the first lap to 2nd, and only 7 seconds behind Pouzar. At this rate, it doesn't appear as though Stanton has enough time to catch Pouzar. As the riders come off the drop away, it's still Pouzar, with Stanton still running 2nd, but Stanton has knocked it down to 6 seconds. The only way Jeff is going to win this one is he's going to have to figure out how to pick up 2 seconds a lap, and that's going to be tough. No doubt all eyes are on the battle for first place, but this is what it looks like behind those 2 riders. In third, number 19, Jeff Leesk in first 125. Number 65, Pekka Bahonen, is running 4th in third 250. Rider number 26, Bervots, is running 5th in 4th 250. Number 22, Stefan Larsson, the Swedish rider, in 6th and 2nd in the 500 class. As the riders come around to get the white flag, Stanton has only moved to within 5 seconds of Pouzar. However, things are looking pretty good for the USA, with Least holding on to first in the 500 class. Pouzar comes around the last turn to take the checker flag, with Jeff Stanton finishing 2nd. Least held on to 3rd for the 500 class win, while Bervots had to put on a late race charge to capture 4th overall and 3rd in the 250 class. Gookins was 5th across the finish line, ahead of Larsson. After the race, Gookins came to the American pits to see Stanton. He congratulated Stanton, but said, "I'll remember that pass next year." A quote from Stanton, he said, "It makes you feel good to win the championship and the team victory." But he quickly added that the Europeans are getting better and better every year, and to win, you just have to keep working harder and harder. So this is the way it looks in the final results with the moto finishes and the overall.
You were determined enough to keep it.
Right.
It's not a trophy to be kept after a certain number of victories. It's a always running trophy. However, this time, the step to number second, the second team was not very large. So, look out next year in Holland. The Europeans are coming. You can feel their breath in your neck. Take this trophy.